The Rangers finally made their first signing of the offseason. Kyle Higashioka, the backup catcher. Or is he a backup catcher? Signing for a 2-year deal? I'll tell you exactly what it means for the Rangers and their winter. All that and more on this episode of Locked On Rangers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked onto the Texas Rangers, the first and best daily Rangers podcast. I'm Bryce Patrick, a cripplingly addicted Texas Rangers fan covering this team for 11 seasons, including all 6 as the founder and host of this podcast. Thank you all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. If you're not already, you can follow me on Twitter at Bryce Patrick. You can follow the show at Locked On Rangers. Hit subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform and on YouTube, where the best way you can help grow the show is to comment nearly any single thing below. Now, before we get into what exactly the Rangers are getting in Kyle Higashioka, what it means for the Rangers this winter, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Now, the Rangers tonight, as I'm recording this, late Monday night, they have signed their first free agent this winter, adding Kyle Higashioka, the former San Diego Padres and New York Yankees catcher, to a 2-year deal with a mutual option for the 3rd year between them, guaranteed $12.5 million. That option has a mutual $1 million buyout. There's also worth $7 million. The first year, $5.75 million in 2025, then $6.75 million in 2026. This is even more than the other catcher I kind of liked for the Rangers. They were going to get a backup 1A, 1B type of situation with Travis d'Arnaud. d'Arnaud signed a 2-year, $12 million deal with the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim after several stellar seasons with the Braves. Now, d'Arnaud is a year older than Higashioka. He does have a much more sterling track record than Higashioka, but Kyle Higashioka, as he is nicknamed by the now retired Yankees broadcaster John Sterling, Higashioka, the home run stroker, is coming off of a career best 17 home runs while being a backup catcher in San Diego last year. He spent the first 7 seasons of his big league career with the team that drafted him, the New York Yankees, splitting time with Jose Trevino in 2022 and in 2023. He was the primary catcher. He did catch or play in at more than half the games for the Padres last year, provided a really nice power source for them. In the seasons before this year, his career high was 10 home runs, which he had done 3 consecutive years in a row: 2021, 2022, 2023, 10 home runs on the dot. This past year, though, in only 84 games, a little over 260 plate appearances, 17 bombs. Now, why am I mentioning the bombs so much? Because that's most of his contribution offensively, is bomb or not much of anything else. But those 17 home runs last year would have put him 4th on the Rangers. As a backup catcher with 84 games, that would have been the 4th most home runs on the Rangers. That's what the Rangers are seeing in this guy, is power and also his glove. He has been an above average to elite framer for the entirety of his major league career. Higashioka has always hit lefties pretty well, significantly better splits against left-handed pitchers for his career than against right-handed pitchers. A 720 OPS versus lefties and a 644 OPS against righties. I know, not the most electric numbers when you're saying, oh, that's a good splits against left-handed pitching. It's a 471 slugging percentage with the on-base skills. Not very good, but when you're a catcher, a backup catcher at that, providing some kind of offensive skill, whether it's on base ability, whether it's hitting in the clutch or for average, or if it's just popping a bomb every once in a while as the number 9 hitter, that adds value. And that's something the Rangers really did not get out of their backup catchers last year. I mean, Andrew Kisner was thought to be an offense first catcher. He did pretty well defensively last year. The Rangers made him a pretty solid framer, had a decent arm, but the offense was abysmal. Basically, not quite Austin Hedges level, but almost a 394 OPS from Kisner, who the Rangers signed to be their, kind of tandem catcher with Jonah Heim. This was an awful year for Jonah Heim. There's no other way to frame it. He had a 602 OPS. He just looked bad for the entirety of this year, but 131 games coming off of a season where he caught roughly a bazillion games most of the regular season, missed some time down the stretch with that wrist injury, but came back maybe a little bit too early and then caught every single postseason game for the Rangers in their World Series championship run. But then this year, a little bit slower start to the season. The Rangers did not have him catch that many games in spring training, hoping to take a little bit of a load off and hoping that they had a quality enough backup catcher to give him some more days to be spelled, to have more time off, to lessen the load on Jonah Heim. That wasn't the case. And even when they traded for Carson Kelly, his offense was solid to average in Detroit before the Rangers traded for him. And then when he came here, Kelly's offense was just not great. I honestly thought that's who the Rangers were going to sign as their backup catcher. But when you look at the Rangers' needs this offseason of the non-pitchers, the actual need, the only actual need that the Rangers had in their offense was to sign a backup catcher. Because if the Rangers went into spring training without making any free agent signings, which was never going to happen, Sam Huff would have been the Rangers' opening day backup catcher. And that was not going to work. It just was not going to work for the Rangers. Now, Higashioka is a little on the older side. He's heading into his age 35 season, coming off of a career best year, the most offense that he has provided. He's been about a 1.5 WAR player each of the last 3 seasons, 1 point according to Fangraphs, 1.6 last year, 1.3 the year before, and 1.6 the year before that. That's about what you're hoping for from a backup catcher. And when he's got an offensive skill of hitting the long ball, that'll play. That'll absolutely play. And a little bonus feature, not to tip the Rangers' hand too much or to look too much into this, but just a little fun fact: Higashioka was born and raised in the United States in California, but he does happen to speak Japanese. I don't know if that's going to play into who the Rangers might have him be catching next year. Rookie Sasaki. I'm just wildly throwing out that speculation there just now. But even though he is on the older side and he is coming off of a career season where you might see that and think, there's no way that guy's doing that again, I might think again, because the Rangers hitting coaching staff in Donnie Ecker, the offensive coordinator, and Justin Veal, the newly signed hitting coach, head hitting coach, not offensive coordinator, those two have a tandem have a knack for getting the most out of older players who the rest of the league looks at and think, that guy's washed. There's no way he's doing anything the rest of his career. That bat done, dried up. But you look at the 2021 San Francisco Giants offense, which was the last time Donnie and Justin worked together, and you see a bunch of old guys on that roster who had career seasons after years of looking completely washed. I mean, look at what Brandon Belt did that season. Look at what Evan Longoria did that season. Look at what Brandon Crawford did that season. Heck, you want to look at an older catcher who had a career year, Buster Posey. Now, I'm not saying that Higashioka is going to do 2021 Buster Posey things or that his ceiling is ever been anywhere near what Buster Posey is doing. But I am saying that these old guys know how to get the most out of some old guys. And with Higashioka signed with that kind of an offensive skill set that the Rangers most definitely need, this is a good fit. Now, coming up, we'll look a little bit at the money and what it indicates. There's 2 ways to look at it: a good way and a bad way. Talk about what those mean and more right after this. This show is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Now, the Rangers, as of this Kyle Higashioka signing, it has not affected their World Series odds for 2025 just yet. Maybe there'll be a little bit of a bump at plus 3,300. Right now, the 14th favorites. I got to say, that's got to go up to at least, plus 3,300. Maybe it'll go all the way up to plus 3,250 with this excellent signing of Kyle Higashioka. So go check out all the action on FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 of bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Now, this signing of Kyle Higashioka for not just 2 years, but 2 years with a mutual option and a $1 million buyout. There's two ways basically to look at this. Let's start with the positive side. The positive spin on this, if the Rangers are willing to spend over $6 million a year for a backup catcher, then that seems to make me think that the Rangers budget this offseason for how much they're going to be allowed to spend from owner Ray Davis. It seems like that budget might be a little bit bigger. At first, we were thinking, around 100 or 220. Gosh, if they had $120 million payroll, then there would have been some trades away to cut payroll, and that would be not ideal. But $220 million, around 20 mil below the luxury tax, was kind of the number that was pinned to. That was kind of the number that Evan Grant speculated on early on in this offseason as to where the Rangers payroll would end up being. That would still leave plenty of room to go and sign basically Nathan Eovaldi, a closer, maybe some kind of backup catcher, maybe in the lower range. I was thinking the Rangers might target $2 to $3 million for their backup catcher. And if they're spending $6+ million on their backup catcher, which again is about the going rate for those backup catchers, sometimes it's even more expensive. I mean, heck, Austin Hedges got $4 million, and he swings a wet pool noodle when he's up there in the box. But he provides a lot of defensive value and a lot of vibes, and numbers allegedly written on his butt for the magic number to win the World Series. But I digress. Higashioka can, I'm sure, write numbers on his butt, allegedly, as well. But anyway, the good news, if you want to look at this in a positive light, is that the Rangers have been cleared to spend some cash, to spend some moolah. Now, don't get this twisted and think, oh yeah, now the Rangers are going to jump in there in the Juan Soto sweepstakes and blow everyone away, and then also sign Corbin Burns, and then also get Roki Sasaki, and then also sign Tanner Scott and Kirby Yates and everybody on earth. That's not necessarily what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that if you're wanting to view this in a positive light, which is where I'm leaning towards at this moment, then you can think, okay, maybe Ray Davis saw the sting of what it looks like to be the reigning World Series champ and to not even finish 500, let alone make the playoffs to defend your title. He must have felt embarrassed. And he said, okay, let's learn from what we didn't do last offseason, which was much of anything. Let's shore up a surefire weakness and not just go out there and get someone serviceable as a backup catcher, not just settle for the Andrew Kisners of the world. Let's go get the best option out there. Let's go outbid other people. Let's open this thing up and get the payroll to, while I still don't think they're going to get into the luxury tax, I think they're going to get a lot closer to it than those initial projections. If they were at $220 million, they'd still be $21 million away from that luxury tax set at $241. Right now, the Rangers still have plenty of room to spend. They could still go out and get Nathan Eovaldi, which I think is still priority number one. They might even be able to add a bat like a Jock Peterson. I was thinking, I was a little skeptical when the Rangers were linked to Jock Peterson, not as necessarily verbatim having interest, but Ken Rosenthal connected those dots all together, and he is the knower of what dots connect pretty well. He wrote an article in The Athletic Monday morning about how the Rangers would be an interesting fit for Jock Peterson, who's projected to sign 2 years, $24 million total, so $12 million a year. And he has been an absolute star offensively for 2 of the last 3 seasons. And you look at the vast majority of his career, he has been a really darn good hitter. And that's the other place where the Rangers could add to this offense, which was, to put it mildly, disappointing last year. And if the Rangers are greenlighting $6.25 million, I think, per year, if my math is mathing correctly, which it might or might not be. Let's see, 6.75, 5.75. Yes, I think 6.25 is the average annual value plus $1 million buyout. Or if he's amazing and they both sides agree to the 2027 mutual option, then he'll make $7 million, and that will be more than either of these years. It also kind of tells me that the Rangers are scaling up. They are doing backloaded contracts. Normally when you have older free agents, they're not doing backloaded deals. Usually when you're signing a free agent hitter or any kind of free agent going into their age 35 season, usually you don't pay more in the age 36 season than the age 35 season. I think they did something similar with Jacob deGrom, but Jacob deGrom is a little bit higher quality of a free agent signing than Kyle Higashioka. No offense intended to Kyle Higashioka, but there's about a $160 million difference in total salary and about not quite 10 times the average annual value, but around 8-ish times the average annual value of the Higgy contract. Maybe 5. Maybe my math is not mathing there correctly, but still, this kind of shows that, okay, the Rangers are going to kind of open that pocketbook up just a little bit, up in a good way, in an encouraging way, not in an insane way, not to the level that if I had all the money on earth I would be spending as the owner of the Texas Rangers, but still in a way that is closer to a team that is spending like the market would indicate. And in this kind of a deal, it's showing that, okay, the payroll might not be in the luxury tax this year, but they are willing to get back into that luxury tax, kind of do the jumping in and out, so they don't take the most severe yearly penalty of being year 3 in the luxury tax as opposed to years 1 and 2. I like that. I like seeing these signs of Rangers aggression. I like the Rangers going and getting a free agent that I know other teams were interested in. I know San Diego was interested in bringing him back. Obviously, I don't think Higashioka was the Padres' number 1 priority in terms of active free agents that are they're trying to bring back. I think that Jurickson Profar is definitely a bigger priority for them and probably should be. Profar is probably getting a much bigger increase in his yearly contract than Higashioka is. Last year, Profar made $1 million. He's probably going to make, I don't know, at least 14 to 15 probably $1 million per year. And the Rangers said, okay, Higgy, we need a backup catcher / 1B catcher to kind of give Jonah Heim a little bit more time to, have some breathers, to not just run him absolutely into the ground like we have the last couple of years, because Heim's heading into his age 30 season, and catching takes a big old toll on the body. But there's also a pessimistic way to look at this signing. If the Rangers spending this much money on a backup catcher, is he really a backup catcher? I'm talking about what that means and some good news on the Rangers World Series documentary front right after this. Now, if you are trying to lean towards the pessimism side, if you are someone who wakes up on the wrong side of the bed more often than not, or if you just label yourself not a pessimist, but a realist, and you're actually a pessimist, don't worry, I've been there before. We've all been cranky old heads watching Texas Rangers baseball, watching last season with the expectations that Rangers fans, myself included, had, and watching what the reality of last season became. You could turn anybody into a pessimist. But the pessimistic viewpoint on signing Kyle Higashioka to a deal this big is not only being pessimistic that Higashioka will end up doing what he did last year again in Texas. You can look at some of those splits and see that his numbers in San Diego were significantly better than his numbers away from San Diego. An 825 OPS in 40 games at home versus in 44 games on the road, get a 665 OPS. So 160-ish point difference. I think exactly 160-point difference, which is interesting because San Diego is not that hitter friendly a park. You go and look at the park factors there. It's not like, I don't know, the Rangers Stadium back before this caged behemoth, before the jet stream was dead, or even like, Yankee Stadium, which is a pretty hitter friendly stadium, or even like that Little League ballpark with the Little League left field they have down there in the southern portion of this state. But if you're more of a pessimist about Jonah Heim, if that's what you're wanting to look at this and think, ugh, this is not a good sign for confidence in Jonah Heim. Heim will be the second highest paid Rangers catcher on the roster this season because, in arbitration, he's projected to make around $4 to $5 million, depending on which projection you're looking at. But either way, that's still less than the 5.75 Higgy is going to be making this season. And usually, when a player is getting paid more than another player at his position, the player that's getting paid more usually plays more. That's usually getting paid more plays more. Blah. Word fart. But that's usually how that works. But that might not be the case with Texas. But if you're wanting to look on the pessimistic side, Jonah Heim had a really, really down year offensively this year. I mean, just was not impacting the baseball, was not putting together really quality at bats, wasn't even hitting lefties well, which is something that he had done fairly well in his career. Heck, even the defensive numbers fell off for Jonah Heim, the framing numbers, the caught stealing numbers. I mean, heck, a lot of his defensive value, his defensive metrics this year painted Jonah Heim as just not that great. And that was Jonah Heim's backbone defensively. I mean, heck, when he was an all-star in 2023, in the first half, offensively, he was phenomenal, but defensively all year long, and heck, even before that, he had always been a solid to great defensive catcher. And this year, that wasn't the case. So if the Rangers are spending this much on allegedly backup catcher in Kyle Higashioka, maybe this means the Rangers think, oof, I don't know about Jonah Heim. Last year might have been more of an indication that this is the Jonah Heim that unfortunately he is, because 2023 might have been an outlier. He had several not great offensive seasons before that. In 2022, he had an on base below 300, slug below 400. And then in 2021, when he was, catcher 1B to Jose Trevino's 1A, he played in 82 games that year and had a 598 OPS. Granted, he did still have 10 home runs, but those they're not great numbers. A 598 OPS. I don't care how good a defensive catcher you are, unless you're literally Austin Hedges, which Heim wasn't quite there defensively in 2021. But still, I think either way, this is mostly a really good sign for the Rangers for what they're doing this offseason, getting on the board with the free agent to a multi-year deal, maybe even a 3-year deal. I think the Rangers see something in Higashioka that someone else is not seeing, and convincing this guy to sign here. Whether that ends up actually playing any kind of a factor in signing Roki Sasaki or not, I have no idea. I don't even know if that's going to be a talking point at all in the meetings with Roki Sasaki, which again, that's not going to be happening until sometime in January. He's not going to be posted officially until I believe maybe somewhere around the middle of December, so that his signing bonus will count up against the international bonus pool for 2025 as opposed to 2024. So all of the teams will reset, so they will have more bonus pool money. There are probably already some pre-agreed to deals with Latin American teenagers that will be suddenly unagreed to. Some under the table deals that might have been agreed to years prior that just happened to fall through. So maybe there will be some more chaos in the international free agent market for those 16 and 17-year-olds that are signing around the early portion of January. But alas, I think this is overall a deal that I'm very excited about because of the other guys who were free agent catchers that were left on the market. Here's the other option that the Rangers had. They could have brought back Carson Kelly. They could have signed James McCann, who's fine, but also older, and I'm not that excited about him. They could have signed Danny Jansen, who's going to be heading into his age 30 season and is just fine. Not that enthralled. Might end up getting a similar deal to Higgy, maybe more, because he's more viewed as a pretty much guaranteed starter, or at least on a mediocre team. There are a few other catchers. I think probably he ranks maybe somewhere in the 10 to 15-ish best catcher range if I was just kind of ballparking it. Then there's, Kurt Casale, who's fine, not great. There's Elias Diaz, who was an all-star, but again, a lot of those numbers felt like they were inflated by him being in Colorado, playing for the Rockies. There's Yasmani Grandal, who, if the Rangers want to go to a buy low option, I really liked what Grandal did this year in Pittsburgh. I mean, for several years, he was one of the best catchers, if not the best catcher in all of baseball. Then he signed a massive deal with the White Sox and looked pretty darn good for the first couple of years of that deal, and then just absolutely fell off a cliff offensively and defensively, really. Last year, he provided pretty solid defensive value and not too bad of value offensively as a switch hitting catcher who is heading into his age 36 season. But other than that, there's not really a whole lot else there. I mean, literally the only other guys that I didn't mention were Luke Maile, who spent last year with the Reds and was not good. There's Tucker Barnhart, who actually, I don't even know if he played last year. And then, of course, Martin Maldonado heading into his age 38 season, who had said, "Oh, I want to play one more year," who was not only terrible offensively as he's been in his entire career last year with the worst team in baseball history, the Chicago White Sox, but he was also pretty terrible defensively. Maybe a little bit of karma for waking up the 2023 ALCS MVP and Adolis Garcia in that kerfuffle. Maybe a little bit justice. I don't see Martin Maldonado. I don't see any scenario where Martin Maldonado would have signed with the Texas Rangers while they were still employing, Marcus Semien or Adolis Garcia or basically anybody on that 2023 Rangers roster. So of those options, outside of the obvious bring back Carson Kelly, I think that the Rangers did a really solid job of signing Kyle Higashioka. Maybe this ends up looking like a not great deal, but either way, if the Rangers don't have the financial might to suffer a $6 million average annual value contract looking not great, then that's more of an indictment on where this team is financially than really anything else. But overall, I'm very, very pleased with the deal, as I am pleased with this little bit of news that trickled out this evening that the Rangers World Series documentary is coming to Amazon Prime. It is going to be debuting the digital version, I believe, as far as I can find, on December 9th. And then on Blu-ray, I believe it will be debuting or available for order about 2 weeks later. Yes, December 17th is when that is supposed to be available for Blu-ray. Now, it's only going to be around 45 minutes. And from all indications that I have read, everything that I have sourced out and seen on this here internet, it is unfortunately just going to be that World Series documentary that Bally Sports aired about 5 minutes after the season was done and then never, ever decided to air again because, sure, why not? Unfortunately, I made the mistake of not DVRing it or asking my parents who actually have DVR to record the first airing of that series or of that documentary, the whole 45 minutes of it, because it happened literally right after the final post-game show on Bally Sports Southwest, which is now FanDuel Sports Southwest, and which we as Rangers fans will probably never, ever, ever have to deal with again. Thank goodness. for the Rangers deciding to go ahead and create their own regional sports network. At least that is the indication of what they will do at this point. But getting 45 minutes of this, it's about half the length of what these other World Series documentaries have been. There's no behind the scenes. There's not a whole lot of interviews or things like that. There's not a whole lot of special features, but honestly, I will take it. I will almost certainly be purchasing it and watching it about 100,000 times. It's not up to snuff with what some of the other World Series documentaries have done. Heck, the Dodgers are getting, I think, at least 3 documentaries on their 2024 World Series championship, and I bet the Yankees will even get one for losing, because why not? But hey, a crappy, shorter documentary, whatever. Maybe it's not crappy. I don't mean to denigrate whoever the fine director is of this documentary. I just wish a little bit more effort would have been put in there from Major League Baseball to document this first championship for the franchise's history. And I don't know why they decided 2023 was the year they're going to stop doing it. But a big middle finger to Rob Manfred for deciding that, or whoever ended up making that call. But a big thumbs up, not a middle finger, to Kyle Higashioka, the newest Texas Ranger, the home run stroker. That's going to do it for today's show. Thank y'all so much for listening and subscribing. And until next time, don't forget to enjoy Texas Rangers baseball.